Hello, and thank you for joining me for yet another episode of the Azar Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Altimese Nichole, and I am so excited to just sit down with you guys for yet another amazing, beautiful season of the Azar Mindset Podcast, where we help you to love your life fearlessly, unapologetically, and really pursuing your goals, knowing that you have the help that you need in love, life, and business. And today I am so excited to be sitting with an amazing life coach. Her name is Valerie Priester, and she is the founder of Victorious Life Coaching LLC. And she works directly with women like me and you, most likely, if you're listening to this. And she has over a decade of experience, and she really leads her coaching with her clients with heart to help you really transform your mindset, your core values, and really helping you to go from overwhelm to profit. So, Valerie, thank you so much
Oh,
for
thank you.
being here with me. And tell us, how did you get into coaching? How did this become your purpose in life?
Well, thank you, Altimese, for having me. I am so happy to be here and honored to be here with you. Oh boy, my journey. What I discovered probably a year ago, just a year ago, that this journey started from probably 5, 6 years old.
Mm,
I was that person, even that kid, that everyone would come to help me solve this problem or hear me out. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? Why am I reacting this
mm,
way? I was always that person,
yeah.
always. And I just realized that like a year ago. So where the journey started, probably at the age of 5 or 6. Now, a
Wow.
lot of my friends call me bossy, which I probably can't be, but
Right?
I think it was even then that I was trying to steer my friends in a direction that would help
Mm,
them to be the best person they could be, have
yeah.
the best emotions and feelings, right? Instead of always being down and sad and out. So it started really, really young. But the real journey, started
Yeah.
with, let's see, I've been in business now for over 14 years. So
Mm,
when I was in my corporate position as a lead project manager, I had 5 women that we started a Bible study at work.
mm,
And another thing that has always been a part of who I am and my character is I'm always the leader, right? I always get
mm.
elected the leader. I don't care what it is. I don't have to volunteer, but it always lands with me. So when that
Yes.
happens, you're just a true leader. So I got elected to be the leader of this Bible study. And so we would meet every week. We would discuss the Bible. We would, talk about the principles and how to live out those principles and really have the type of life that you desired. And one of the things that these 5 women admired about me was that I was always in a happy place. I was
Mm,
always this upbeat, nothing's wrong, everything's just perfect. And even though it wasn't, because we all go through life
yeah.
challenges and things, but it was how I handled those challenges, I believe, that brought to them this whole different perspective of how we get to live this life.
Yes.
And in fact, they
Mm.
used to call me the flowers and berries lady. It's like nothing ever bothers you. And I was like, well, that's not true. It does, but I just
Yes.
handle it differently, right? And
Yeah.
as we were going through these Bible studies, it was these 5 women that really wanted to have a better understanding of who God is, and more importantly, who He is in our life, who He is to us,
Mm,
right, on a
mm-hmm.
personal level. And through that and working with them, I just started helping them to see things from a different perspective, right? And on a deeper level, and really helping them to deepen in their relationship with God. Because for me, it was always about relationship and
Yes.
not so much about
Yes.
religion, but it was
Yeah.
relationship. And even at
Yeah.
that time I didn't really know, that it was relationship. I just had a different way of being with God. I had a different way of accepting and receiving who He was. And
Yeah.
after working with them, I mean, I watched their lives just soar, right? One of them,
Yeah.
of course, started a business that she wanted to start for years and kept putting off. Another became like the leader of her women's ministry in this huge mega church. And I just watched their lives change. And it was at the prompting of these five women that said, you should look into coaching. I'm like,
Mm.
coaching? The only coaching I knew was athlete coaching. And I was like, I don't want to do
Right.
it. What is that? And they, just kept telling me that you have this way of pulling out our confidence. You have this way of helping us to believe in ourselves and believe that we can do
Mm.
more and be more and have more. And you really should look into coaching. I was like, okay, I'll check that out. So I did my due diligence. Of course,
Mm.
there's a lot of, coaching programs out there. There's a lot of certification programs out there. What I was looking for was something that aligned with my beliefs. And
Yes.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I landed with Christian life coaching. And so I
Mm.
became a certified Christian life coach. And that's where this journey started. And so from there,
That's
I just wanted
beautiful.
to, my biggest thing was I wanted to help women be the best that they could be. I've always been drawn to helping women because I went through challenges and I went through,
Mm-hmm.
struggles. I was a single parent for many years. Um, I struggled with finances for many years because of being a single parent and not really having enough a lot. And
Mm.
I wanted women to be able to create their own economy. I wanted women to be able to stand on their own and not rely
Mm-hmm.
on anyone else. Certainly not rely on a man. And that's not man bashing, but I wanted them to know that you don't have to take that route. You can rely on your own abilities to create
Yeah.
the income that you need to take care of you and your family. And that's where this
Mm.
journey started.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's awesome that your friend and your friends in your circle, they identified you as that person, and they saw you as the sunshine and the rainbows and all of that, because you had such a positive perspective in life and you were able to help them.
Yes.
Can you tell us, that, because I honestly I can identify with
Yeah.
that, where people just kind of see me as sunshine
Yes.
and all of that, completely oblivious to the reality that life still happens
To
to me
you. Yes.
too,
Yes.
right? So, with this perception that, people have of nothing bothers you,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Um, Number one, how do you navigate through that? And what have been some of your strategies of dealing with life
Hmm.
to ensure that it doesn't taint how you show up in the world?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The biggest thing is, eh, like you said, we have struggles too. I may appear strong on the outside, but there's always been struggle in my life. I was a product of divorced
Yes.
parents. My parents divorced when I was very, very young, so I was raised by both sets of my grandparents, my parental and maternal grandparents. And I struggled in relationships, right? Didn't have healthy relationships, healthy boundaries because I was a product of divorced parents. So I didn't really know what healthy
Right.
relationships look like. I had my grandparents as role models and examples, but it's different when you're looking at grandparents compared to parents, right? So I
Right.
never really
Right.
lived in the house with my parents and was able to see any type of healthy relationship. So I struggled with relationships. And as a result,
Mm.
I'm on my third marriage, right? So,
Mm.
of course, there
Mm.
was struggle in that in two divorces. The biggest thing
Yeah.
that for me was I always had to look back at what happened in each of the situations, no matter what the struggle was, no matter what the challenge was that I went through. Somehow I always had the knowing to look back at the situation and examine myself, examine my role,
Mm.
right? Because
Yes.
even
Yes.
through two divorces, there were two people involved in that. And so, I really don't know, other than it was God's direction on my life. I don't know how I always knew that it wasn't just the other person's fault, that it was two
Right.
people
Right.
involved in this. right? And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the biggest tools that I've always used is to look back at the situation and assess myself. What role did I
Mm-hmm.
play? Right? Where did
Mm-hmm.
I maybe drop the ball, or where was it that I needed more knowledge, experience,
Yeah.
right? And by doing that, it helped me to always keep a clear picture of not blaming the other person, not blaming anyone else for what was going on in my life, because I truly believe that our choices and our decisions create our life. And so
Yeah.
that can only
Yeah.
be my blame and no one else's. And so the biggest tool has always been
Mm-hmm.
to assess myself, right? When I struggle with
Mm-hmm.
being a single parent, it's like those struggles were real. They were real. And
Yeah.
again, most people didn't see that. Now, I had a real strong family support system. They helped, with um, the needs that my daughter had at the time, like helping with buying school clothes and those type things. But it was still a struggle. And it always felt like a struggle because it wasn't me providing solely for my daughter. It was with the help of
Mm-hmm.
my family. And
Mm-hmm.
while I was very grateful for that, it still left me feeling like I'm not doing my part, right? I'm not being the
Yeah.
mother that I
Yeah.
should be because I'm not able to take care of her the way that I want to take care of her. But there were really, really some
Mm-hmm.
struggle days. I mean, days where, we shared a can of pork and beans, and she had to get most of it
Yeah.
because I had to make sure
Yeah.
she ate. And she never really, it's so funny, she never really realized that we were struggling. And that's because I had such a strong family support.
Mm-hmm.
She had probably five grandmothers most of her life. And so, grandmothers, they're gonna
Yeah.
they're gonna take care of you. But
Yeah.
there
They
was a real
cover
struggle
you.
going
Yeah.
on. And I just had to
Yeah.
realize that, okay, where have I made decisions that have either caused more of a
Mm.
struggle for myself or put me in a position that created more struggle? Where have I made those decisions? And that's been my
Yeah.
biggest tool.
I love that. I love that. And I think I have observed that there are two different types of people. There are the people who need the reminder to take that responsibility and be accountable for the decisions and the actions that were made. And then you have the people who take so much
Mm.
ownership that they feel a sense of
Yes.
condemnation in the process of, oh, I should not have done that. I shouldn't have, that was a bad decision. How do you, for the women listening that
Yes.
overstand
Yes.
what you're saying, how do you what advice do you have for them in making sure that it remains in a
Mhm.
space that is
Mhm.
healthy, and as they're assessing their part in roles and in relationships, that they don't fall into a pit of self-pity or
First of all, the
condemnation?
Bible tells us there is no condemnation, right? Um, so if
Yep.
you're truly a believer of who you are, the greatness of who you are, the purity of who you are, right? Then that's where you start is looking at where am I condemning myself? Because here's the truth. There's really never a need to condemn ourselves for anything because we make decisions
Hmm.
based on the knowledge that we have at the time. That's the only way that we could
That's
ever make
right.
decisions. Some of those decisions go very well, some of them can go horribly wrong. But if we hold
Yes.
ourselves in
Yep.
condemnation over the decisions that went wrong, then we miss the opportunities to find the lessons. And when we carry
Mm.
that condemnation and that burden of, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or oh, I was so wrong for doing that, when we carry that throughout our lives, we are bound to repeat it because we have not recognized the lesson. So we have
Hmm.
to balance taking ownership and then not, as you said, going overboard and taking on too much of the ownership that it turns into the condemnation. Right? Because
That's right.
we're human, and
That's
what
right.
we're here to do is to absolutely do our best. And I believe that every person strives to do their best in every given situation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yep.
right? But we have to give
Mm-hmm.
ourselves grace first. We have to forgive ourselves
Mm-hmm.
first before we can ever look at forgiving anyone else that's involved in any situation or circumstance, right? If we don't forgive ourselves, again, we keep holding on to this guilt, this shame, this embarrassment, uh, the blame, all of that stuff that we hold on to, and it's toxic, and it really keeps us from receiving God's best because his best can't work
Mm-hmm.
its way through all of that low level negative energy. It can't mix, they can't
Mm.
coexist.
Yes.
They cannot coexist. So it's like you can't have
Mm-hmm.
faith and worry together because they just can't coexist. And the same
Same
thing, you can't
time.
have blame and
Yeah.
ownership together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about something that's extremely important in this process, which is understanding who you
Yes.
are. If someone is struggling with
Who they
the
are.
clarity of who they are, how can they begin to do the work internally and spending the time with God? Like, how can they begin to kind of
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
how
That
God
comes
sees
with the
them?
relationship, right? That comes with um,
Mm,
taking the time, like, and this should be a daily routine, taking the time to not just pray, because I think what happens to a lot of
mm,
believers is we get caught in this traditional way of being, communicating with God, all of those things. And we try to do the things that we were taught to do in the traditional way because then that makes us feel like, well, we're doing the right thing, right? But
right.
when we talk about relationship, it's about taking the time to not only communicate with God, but more importantly, I believe, to listen. And that's where spending the time in silence and just sitting and just hearing and absorbing and connecting. I believe our true connection comes from listening and not speaking,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when we
Mm-hmm.
listen,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we get the instruction. That's where we get the guidance. That's where we get um, the true explanation of who you are. That's where it comes from. And so instead of trying to figure out who you are, if you start a practice of communication and listening and relationship, it will be revealed to you who you really are. But on a general level, who you are
Mm-hmm.
is you are this amazing creation, and there's no other creation like the human being. That's who you are. And you're created in
Mm-hmm.
greatness. You're created in purity. You're created in being the 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 perfect being, right? And many of us don't want to call ourselves perfect, but you are the perfect being. You were created that way. What makes
Right.
us feel like we're not perfect or that we're
Yeah.
less than or we're not enough is all of the things that have been added to our teachings and our learning and the the advice that people have given and what you should do and what you shouldn't do and who you should be and who you shouldn't be. You were created perfectly, perfect. And when you build this relationship where you can hear
Mm-hmm.
clearly, that's what helps you to really identify with who you are, right? And you have to feed
Mm-hmm.
yourself this knowledge
Mm-hmm.
because we've been fed for so many years in growing up this different persona of who we are, right? We have been taught that we have to
Yeah.
strive to be good. We have to strive to be good enough. We have to strive in order to make sure that we're living right, doing right, all of those things. And it's like that took away all of our being, just being who we were created to be. It just stripped it all away. And now we're constantly striving to be something different. But when you're ready and
Right.
able to hear and release a lot of what has been taught, I love to say that you have to unlearn a lot of stuff. You got to unlearn
Learn.
a lot of
Yes.
stuff. And that's
Yes.
painful sometimes because our beliefs are so strongly tied
Yeah.
to who we think we are, right? And again, no fault of
Mm-hmm.
anyone because
Mm-hmm.
our parents or our elders or the authority figures that were in our lives that taught us these things, they could only teach us what they knew. They could only give us what they had.
Right. Right.
And that was fine to get us where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
But then it becomes our responsibility to create our own relationship and not mama's relationship with God, not grandmama's relationship with God. It
Right.
becomes our responsibility to create our own relationship. And through that is how you learn who you really are.
I love that. And, I know that you coach women entrepreneurs, and I can speak for myself when I say, I did not
Ooh.
choose entrepreneurship.
Oh my
I
God, we're
actually
so
was like, I don't want
close.
it. People saw it in me. Yeah, people saw it in me and they were like, "You could do this." And I was like, "I don't want that. I'm okay with a corporate job, that security of that check coming every 2 weeks and all." Like, I was fine. I knew that as an entrepreneur, it rises and falls on the effort that you put in. And I was like, "No, I'm gonna go
Right,
ahead and
right,
support this other person's vision." And I will, and my
right.
company was actually a side hustle for quite some time
Hmm.
until I was laid off. I went in one day. I had my meeting with my supervisor at 10. I was
Oh
home
wow.
with my box by 11. And it was and of that security, right? I had 2 weeks severance pay.
Wow.
A daughter that just turned 1, and a husband at the time that was a
Commission.
that was a real estate agent, and they are on commission. So my security job, that was the
Yes.
sole source of income coming into the house. And I said, "Oh my goodness." And I had to dive headfirst into the business. And I will give my ex-husband credit because I remember he was home when all of this happened, and he said, "Instead of asking for another seat at a table that wasn't created for you in the first place, why don't you focus on
That's good.
building what you have here? Why don't you
Yeah.
focus on your business?" And I went head first. That next day, he found a networking event in Savannah for me. I went to that networking event. I met two of the most amazing souls that I am still connected to today.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I haven't looked back. But I will say that
Yes.
journey of
Yes.
entrepreneurship, it was, it pushed me into
Hmm. Hmm.
a deeper
Yeah. Yeah.
relationship with God, because yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it pushed me literally. There were certain things in my business that mirrored broken areas in my personal life,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't fix the business
You are
until I
speaking my
fixed
languages.
what's over here. And I just I couldn't. And there was no
Nothing.
process, no
Nothing.
SOP, no anything
That's right.
that would fix the business until I addressed what was over here. And I know
Absolutely.
that is what you specialize in. So how do if there is a woman that can identify to what I'm saying, or she has the idea, like there's a seed planted in her heart of potentially starting entrepreneurship and potentially
Hmm.
starting her business, but there's fear
Oh
surrounding that
wow.
seed, what would you
Man,
tell
you
her?
touched
What
on
would
so
you
many
share
things
with
that are
her?
just so much my story. So much my story. So for the entrepreneurship part,
Mhm.
I've always had the entrepreneur spirit. My grandparents, my mother's parents were entrepreneurs before they even knew what that was. Like they used to purchase homes, rent them out, or
Mm.
sell them, right? Fix them up, rent them out, and sell them. Well, that's called flipping.
Wow. Yeah.
So I would watch them do that. My
Yeah.
grandfather, that
Yep.
same grandfather, was co-owner in a car lot. right? It wasn't big enough to be called a dealership, so it was a used car lot.
Mm,
So there was always some level of entrepreneurship in my family. My mother owned her own beauty salon, right? She
mm,
was also a professional R&B singer. So she
mm,
always had this entrepreneur spirit as well. And I think I inherited that. So I've always wanted to own my own business. That was my dream. That was my absolute dream was I have to own my own
mm,
business. So when I decided to step into
mm.
entrepreneurship, it was kind of always in the works. I mean, I've sold black art, shaping garments, Tupperware, Ava, you name it, I have tried it,
Yeah,
right? and and I'm very good at it.
yeah.
What I would say to someone who is looking to start is first of all, entrepreneurship is not for everyone because it is challenging. It really is.
Mm.
Now, out in these internet streets, they make it look all fine and glamorous. And trust and believe that's not it.
Glamorous. Mm-hmm.
That's not it. And
That's right.
so, I hear
Right.
people say, well, I want to start my own business because I want to own my own time. I said the same thing. I want to own my own time. I want to be my own boss. And, you have this
Mm.
vision. You think that I can work half days. No, you're going to work more than you ever work for anyone else in
More.
entrepreneurship, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's rewarding also. It is very
Yep.
rewarding because it's something that you get to build and you get to create. So my whole way of really helping
Mm-hmm.
women to look at entrepreneurship is first of all, do what you love. Find what you love and create a business out of
Mm-hmm.
that. Because when the times get rough, and they will, when the valley moments come, and they will, you need more than just, I want to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You need more than just a light passion.
That's right.
This has to be something that you are sold out for and that you love doing. And when I say I'm sold out for helping women, that's what I love doing. My husband always says to me, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how you do it. He said, you talk to people all day long and you never seem like you're tired. You could just go, go, go. And I can because it never feels
Yeah.
like work. Never feels like work. Right. So
Yes.
that's one point I wanted to make is that it's not easy for everyone to fall into the entrepreneurship world. You must be ready for it. It is hard work, it's dedication,
Mm-hmm.
it takes your time, it takes
Mm-hmm.
money, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes the right mindset, right?
Yep.
That's the other piece flowing into having the
Yep.
right mindset to be an entrepreneur. You must have a growth mindset. You must believe that anything is possible for you. You must believe that you can learn anything. You must believe that you're able to accomplish anything, right? If you are stuck in a fixed mindset that believes I can only do so much, I can only learn so much, you hear all these things like, oh, I'm too old to learn. No, I mean, I started my business after 40.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never too old to learn. You're never too young to learn.
Mm.
But if you have the right mindset about what's possible for
Mm-hmm.
you, that's what will help you to grow even more in your entrepreneurship journey. But it does start with your mindset. I can give someone the blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
I can give them the ABCs, the one, two, three, take
Mm-hmm.
this step, do this step, give you a whole layout of how to build a business, how to start the business, all of that. But if your mindset is not in the right place, you're going to struggle. It's going to be difficult.
Yep.
It's going to be challenging for you
Yep.
because you're not first believing in who you are to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Now, knowing who you are leads to you knowing that you can do, be, and have anything that you desire and anything that you put your mind to. That's why our minds are so
Mm-hmm.
powerful. And so the thoughts that we're having, the things that we're saying, the labels that we put on ourselves, all of those things create our
Mm-hmm.
reality. And when you're going into business, if you're constantly
That's right.
saying things like, I can't afford it, I can't make enough money, people won't hire me, all of those things, those are declarations that you're putting out there and proclaiming over your success. But that's not true. You can do any of that. You can do any
That's
of that.
right.
And it all starts with your mindset. It all starts with what you're thinking, what you're believing, right? And fear is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to be there. So when you
Always.
look at fear, we're only born with two fears. That's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. The rest of our fears we create. And we
Mm.
create them with the stories that we tell
Mm-hmm.
ourselves every single day. And if you stop and you listen to the stories that you're telling yourself
Mm-hmm.
about, let's say this dream that you have, I want to start this business and this is my dream. What's the story that you're telling yourself about that dream? Are you saying, I don't think I can do it? Are you
Mm-hmm.
saying, I don't know if I can do it? Right? Um, I don't know how to do it. I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't have a gift. I don't have a calling. I don't have an anointing. Are you saying those things about this dream? Then that's the story that you're using to create the reality, which is you will never start that dream. But if you shift those stories and you start to believe
Mm.
and say to yourself, it starts with the thought creates the belief, because a belief is just a thought that we keep having over and over and over again. So if we keep having the thought that I can't do something, I can't do something, I can't do something, that turns into the belief that you can't do it. So you start with changing your way of
Mm-hmm.
thinking,
Mm-hmm.
changing your thoughts. And as you change your thoughts, you do that by using a change of language. What do we say? And sometimes this can be difficult because people don't
Mm-hmm.
believe it at first. Like we say things, we say affirmations, mantras, and we don't believe them at first. That's okay, right? What I always like to do with my clients is, instead of using an affirmation that is, a well-known affirmation, let's say, I'm a money magnet. If you don't really believe that, it doesn't matter how many times you say it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna land for you, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you've got to create affirmations that align with
Right.
where you are in this moment, where your belief level is in this moment.
Mm.
And that could be that I'm learning to be a money magnet. That could bring more truth to you than
Mm-hmm.
I am a money magnet. And you keep saying that and saying that until that becomes your
Yes.
belief. And as it becomes your belief, then it becomes your reality.
Mm. And you touched on something, and
Okay.
I think we cannot skip past it. We have to
Ooh,
address the
yes.
power of words. We have to address I I am literally
Yes.
living things I spoke. I'm literally, and I remember I just told a friend this story not too long ago of how when I first purchased a car, my very first car,
Yes.
you know, you driving, people can be crazy on the road, right? So if someone does something that's crazy, I would say out of my mouth, that's okay. If you hit me, just make sure you total it because I have gap. Literally, I would say that.
Make sure you
That's
total it.
okay. If you hit me, just make sure you total it because I have gap. Exactly 1 year. I don't even think it was a year. It's probably 6 months after purchasing that brand new car. I was in Atlanta and I was making a left turn and somebody was flying down and they hit me, and they hit me hard enough
Wow.
that the
Wow.
car had
Yeah.
to be
Because you
totaled.
you declared it. Yeah.
I declared it. And I think that it's
Right.
not
It's just true.
it's not spooky or anything. Actually, the
The
word of
power
God
is in the
says
word.
that it is true. So
It's in your
yes, the
tongue.
power
Yes,
is
it
in
is.
life and
Yes, it
death
is.
is in the power of the tongue. What are some strategies?
Yes.
Because a lot of us haven't been taught this. A lot of us haven't, we grew up in households where words were thrown frivolously, jokes were made
Yes.
all the time
Yes.
about who we are or
Hmm.
what we do or how we look, and and so
Yes.
our upbringing, for a lot of people, that's the environment. So what are some strategies people can use to start to get their mind
Sure.
in a space of being mindful
Hmm.
of the words that they speak
Hmm.
over
Yeah. That's
themselves
that's where
and
that
over
that
other
routine
people?
comes in, right? So we have to become
Yeah.
self-aware. We have to look at, just as you
Mm-hmm.
said, what am I saying? You have to listen to yourself. And what I do and teach my clients to
Mm-hmm.
do as well is, periodically throughout the day, you need to stop and ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? Because there's
Mm-hmm.
70,000 plus thoughts going on in your head. And I can guarantee you 60 to 70% of them are negative. in any given moment. And so
Yeah.
until you become aware of these things, it's
Yeah.
impossible for you to change it. And as you said, a lot of the words that we speak and a lot of things that we
Mhm.
say, it's so subtle that we don't even realize that, oh, this is what I'm saying. Right? I had
Yes.
one client who would always say, I just
Yes.
want to make enough to make payroll. I just want to make enough to make payroll. So she has a team. I just want to make enough to make payroll. And 2 years later, she's like, I don't understand why I can't
Hmm.
grow my income. So I said, well, one of the things I keep hearing you
Uh-huh.
say is I just need to make enough to make payroll. I said, so are you making payroll? Yes, I'm
Uh-huh.
making payroll, but the income's not growing. So you're getting exactly what you're asking for.
Yes.
You're getting exactly what you're putting out there. So
That's
let's
it.
cancel that from your vocabulary. No longer
That's
do
it.
you just want to make enough to make payroll, right? You want to make enough to reach your income goal, whatever that is. And I
That's
used to do
it.
the same thing. I was like, oh, I
That's
don't need to
right.
make that much in my business. And that's when I would, charge lower fees, do free coaching, all of that crazy stuff.
Yep.
Because I don't need to make a lot in my business.
Free. Uh-huh.
Who's in business for that? Right.
Who's
So
in
so I
business for
had to
that?
stop
That's
saying
right.
that and
That's
start saying what I
right.
truly want. I used to be afraid to say I want to make six figures. I want to make because the
Mm-hmm.
fear that came along with that was, do I know enough to do that? Am I going to have to work extra hard to be able to do that? All those
Yeah.
fears came with that, right? And it wasn't until again
Yeah.
became
Yeah.
self-aware and said, okay, what am I saying? Of course I want to make six figures. That's just the beginning of the mark. Of course I want to be there. And as you
That's
start to
right.
change the language and recognize the language, you got to recognize it first. You can't change what you cannot acknowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot
And
change what you
see.
cannot
Yes.
acknowledge.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you've got to
Yes.
look at, what am I saying daily about who I am, what I'm capable of doing, what I'm capable of having, and who I'm capable of being. What am I saying? And as you notice that, I,
Mm-hmm.
would say journal
Mm-hmm.
the things that you're saying so you can see it. Because a lot of times we say stuff and we don't even realize that we're saying those things. But journal it so that you can recognize
Mm-hmm.
these are the things that
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, and then create counter
Mm-hmm.
active mantras, affirmations, or something that goes against it. And remember, as I said,
Yes.
you don't have to go all the way to the right with something you don't believe in this moment. Make it so that it's believable for you in this moment, wherever you are. But our words are so very powerful,
Yes.
so powerful. And every single thing that we speak, we
Yes.
create.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you go back to the
That's
word says
right.
that it was created by the word,
That
the
is
spoken word. Let there be light,
word.
and it was
That's right.
created.
That's right.
So why do we feel we're different? We're
That's
not, because
right.
we're a same of the same. We're part of the same God, and we have the same powers. We have the same abilities.
Yes. Yes.
We
Created
have
in
the
his own
same
image.
power and
Yes.
abilities. We
Yes.
are co-creators, and so every
Yes.
single thing we say.
Yes. And I think
Oh
people are afraid
yes.
to accept that. I think, especially
Oh,
believers. I feel that believers feel that that is
I'm not
wrong
God.
to say, I'm not like I'm not. God is God. I'm not like that. And I'm like, I want us to really challenge that thought process,
In
because
His
He
image.
literally created
In
us
His
in His
image.
own
So that means
image.
you're a duplicate of Him. You're not different. You're not
A
lower. You're
duplicate.
a duplicate. And
Right.
in the Bible it
Look,
says that you will do these things
exactly.
and greater. What does that mean? It means that you have the
Yes.
ability to do that. And you're absolutely
Mm.
right when you say that most believers struggle with this. I struggled with that. I struggled with when I was first
Yeah.
introduced to the law of attraction. I so struggle. Oh, I so struggle with that. I
Come
struggled,
on. Let's
girl.
talk about it.
Listen,
Let's talk
I
about it.
was like, nope,
Let's
I don't want no
talk
parts of
about
that.
it.
Nope. Had my cross up, like, nope, nope, because you're trying to get me to go against
Right.
God. And I will never go against God.
Uh-huh.
I will not look at another God. I don't want any of that. I want no
Come with it.
parts of that. And now that came from my Southern Baptist upbringing,
Come with it.
right? How we were taught.
That's right. How
Yes.
we were taught.
Yes.
The
Because
things
now
we've
you're
learned.
saying that
Yes.
when you tell
That's
me I'm
right.
equal with God,
That's right.
to me, that's blasphemy. What do you mean I'm equal with God? No, I'm not. God is
That's
here. He was
right.
always be here higher, and I'm down here.
Right.
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 And
God
so
is
I
here and
turned
I'm
away. I was
down
like, nope,
here.
no
That's
parts, no
right.
parts. Well, as God would have it, because He always directs us to the
Mhm.
right path.
Mhm.
3 years later, it showed up again.
That's
But
right.
this time, I was now in a different church. I was in a church that taught who we are.
Mm.
I was in a church that
Mhm. Mhm.
taught against bondage and against you're trying to prove yourself for
Yeah.
God and all of the rules and the regulations and the
Yeah. That
be a
you have
certain
to
way,
pray
dress
a
a
certain
certain
way,
way.
talk a certain way,
So God
drink
had
a
led
certain
me to
way.
this church
Yes.
where
Yes.
my pastor he's a teacher. He's a true
Mm.
teacher of the word. And what he was teaching absolutely
Mm.
freed me because now there was no more feelings of, oh,
Mm.
if I don't do that right, I'm not going to heaven. If I don't do that right, God's not hearing my prayers. If I don't do that right,
That's
God
right.
won't bless me. There was no more of that, right? There was only the
Mm.
understanding and the realization that you get to create that. If that's what you want, you get to create that. And God
That's
is
right.
backing you every step
You
of the way
create it.
because He wants nothing but the best
Everything
for
your
you.
way. Yes.
Nothing but the best for
Yes.
you. And your well being is His
Yes.
main focus.
Yes.
So if what you desire, which by the way, He
Mm.
put the desire there anyway. So if you desire something, He is
That's
obligated
right.
to help you bring it to pass. Help you bring it to pass. Not bring it to pass for you, help you bring it to pass. You are a co
For you.
creator in this process.
That's right.
And so your part of creating is what you say.
That's right.
Your part of creating is what you're thinking, what you're
Mm.
declaring. That's your part of creating. Because if you declare a thing to be so, it is so. And
Mhm.
He will back it every step of the way. But for
That's
many
right.
believers, they have trouble with that because
Mm.
this is one phrase that, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
every time I would hear it, it would just turn my stomach. It would turn my stomach. And I have to be honest and say, when I hear people say this, it lets me know that if I take this person on as a client, it's going to be a real journey, right? Because I got to break through a lot of things. Um,
Be a challenge.
but when I hear people say, I'm waiting on
Yeah.
God, I'm waiting on God. I'm
That's
like, what you
right.
waiting on Him to do? What is it? What is He gonna do? What
Right.
you waiting on Him to do? Right. Like He gave you the
What you
desire.
waiting on?
He gave you the vision. He gave you the dream. You can see and
Yeah.
you know what you want. Now
Yeah.
what are you waiting on Him to do? Because now the work is up to you.
Yes.
It is up
Yes.
to you to take the first step. It is up to you
That's
to get
right.
into action.
That's right.
And when you take the first step, He will show you the next. When I started this whole coaching thing, again, I knew nothing about coaching. I knew nothing about it. Didn't know what to do, any of that. When I got certified and I started working with women, I remember saying, oh God, I don't really know what to do or how to do this. I'm just going to follow what I've been taught. And I would always hear, take the first step, take the first step. Took the first step. He showed me the
Mhm.
next, right?
Mhm.
And it was through one of the
Mm.
entrepreneur journeys that I was on when I was selling women's shape garments, right? And it was through that, and He
Yeah.
continued to show me the gift that I have to be able to pull out confidence and help to uplift women and make them feel just absolutely amazing. And when I would put these women in these garments,
Mm.
and then they would just, their whole, everything would just change. Everything. I could see it in their face. I could
Yeah.
see, it bubbling up from them like, oh my God, I have never
Mm.
felt like this. And it was just a garment. But what came
Yeah.
with the garment was my ability to
Yeah.
pull
Yeah.
out their confidence, their greatness, and remind them of who they are. That's what came with it. And so every step of the
Yeah.
way, God
Yeah.
continued to show the next step and the next step and the next step. But if I had sat back and said, I'm just waiting on God, I would not be here today. I would not be in
Mm.
this position today. So there's no waiting
Mm.
on God. He is
Mm.
waiting for you. You have to give Him something to work with. If you're the co creator with Him, then He has to have something to
Mm.
work with along with you. He's not going to do all of it.
Yeah.
He's not.
And
But he's going to bless every step that you
yeah.
take.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's the step that you take, not the one that you're sitting back waiting.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Yes. And let me also add, so the law of attraction,
That's
the
good.
secret, right? That they call the law of attraction. God has, there are certain laws
Gravity.
implemented on this earth, period, like gravity.
Who you are.
You can't, I don't care if you think you can fly
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
go, try it. You will see that
The
you
gravity.
cannot defy the law of gravity. The law of attraction is
Yes.
also very, very
Harvest.
similar to
That's
seed
it.
time and harvest. It's literally the same, it's the same thing. So when we think of the secret, I also want to point out, right? If there are believers who are listening to this and they see people operating
Yes.
in the law of attraction that are
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it is a
Yeah.
law on this earth. That doesn't mean that person has to be in alignment with
To work.
God for that
It's
law
going
to
to
work
work. It's
in
going to
their
work every
life.
single
It's
time.
like gravity
Yep. Yep.
every single time. So it's a matter
Yes.
of
Yes.
your heart positioning, right? It's a matter of
Yes.
who
Yes.
you are surrendered to
All the difference.
that makes
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
all the difference in the world of whether or not you are operating and aligning yourself in the space
Exactly.
of
Exactly.
of God's word
Right.
and what he has for you
Right.
versus
Right. Right.
being of this
Yeah.
world
Right.
and utilizing the law of
Very true.
attraction and the secret. I just wanted to point that out because I feel a lot of people, we
We
see
see it
it
a lot.
with
Mm-hmm.
celebrities and we see it all the time. And
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
matter of your heart
Absolutely.
positioning
Your
and who you
motives.
are
What's
connected
your
to.
motives? Right? And your intentions.
Your
That's what's most
motives, your
important.
intention.
And
Right.
when I
Yes.
like I said, I turned away from it when I first saw it, and then it came back around about 3 years later. And then I began to see that, as you said, most of this is just the laws of the
Mm,
universe. And they align
it
with
is.
the word of God,
It is.
right? So
That
absolutely
is right.
seed time
Yes.
and harvest time, right? So whatever thoughts you're sowing,
Harvest.
that's the
Mhm.
harvest you're going to get, right? I tell my clients all the
It's
time, you can
manifesting.
never ever
Yep.
plant an apple
Yep.
seed and get an orange tree. It will never happen. So whatever seed you're planting,
That's right.
that's the harvest that you're
Right.
going to get, right? That comes from our
That's what you're
thoughts.
getting.
It comes from what we are thinking and what we're speaking and
Yep.
what we're, labeling all these different things as. We create those things.
Yes.
We create them. When I,
That's right.
went
That's
through
right.
the
That's
second
right.
divorce and I said, okay, again, looked at myself. What is it that I need? What is it that I'm missing in order to have a very nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
loving
Mm-hmm.
relationship? There has to be something in me that needs to be corrected as well.
Mm.
Well, the first thing was I had to learn to love myself
That's right.
because I was looking for love out there, and for them
Mm-hmm.
to love me, but I wasn't loving
Yeah.
me. And you cannot get love from others unless you're loving
Mm-hmm.
yourself first. Yes.
That's how
Yes.
you identify
Yes.
if it's love, because it's based
Yourself.
off of how you treat yourself. So if
That's how I
if
treat
if the
me.
person
Right.
cannot match or exceed,
That's not it. That's
then
not
you
it.
can easily
Yeah.
say,
Yeah. So I had to do that
that's not
work
it.
and get
Yeah.
into a place
Yeah.
where I understood first, love me, right? And then I can receive love because I'm giving out love. I'm giving out
Yes.
the love from me of
Yes.
myself.
Yeah.
And that is what is attracted to the person that
Yes.
is coming to me, right? So all of it is
Yes.
about what we put out, we get back. What we put out,
Mhm.
we get back. And so, as it would be,
Yes.
I
Yes.
learned to love myself, put out love, and attracted an amazing man. We've been married now, it'll be 25 years in January,
Yeah.
right? And I never in my wildest dreams used to
Mm.
think that, oh God, I could be married for 20 something years. So the longest was like 7 years. And this has been, it was a lesson in love. It was a lesson in surrender.
Mhm.
and really trusting and believing, right? So
Mm.
he
Mhm.
appeared and
Yeah.
we started dating. And the next thing I know, he was sent
Mhm.
away on assignment overseas. So now we're dating long distance. And then the engagement came, and I was like,
Mm.
okay. And then once we got married, I had to move overseas. And then I was like, God, you got jokes. So I
Mhm.
know you got me. I know
Right.
you got me. But I'm
Yeah,
just,
yeah, and
he's an
God has
amazing sense of
God
humor.
has
I'm
an
like, oh my
amazing
gosh. So
sense
I
of
was a
humor,
single
don't he?
parent, like I said, for many years. And at that point, I had really
Mhm.
began to raise up in my finances and was able to take care of me and my daughter, and I was doing very well. And when I married him, I had to move overseas. I couldn't work because his company only provided visas for
Mm.
their employees. So
Mm.
that meant I had to be dependent on him. I hadn't been in that position in a long time where I was
Mm.
dependent on a man.
Mm.
So it's like, I was like, God, oh, you got jokes. You
Yeah.
got jokes. You got jokes. I was like, we were already long distance because he was in Michigan and I was in Florida. And I was like, so you couldn't just move me to Michigan? Like, from Michigan, I could get back home and, right, I
Right,
can't just go
right, right.
there.
You can't
Nope,
just go
you
over
got to go
here.
all the way to Brazil.
Right.
I'm like, ooh, ooh. So a
Mm.
lesson in surrendering and trusting came from that. Because then it was, God was like, well, are you going to trust me? You asked for
Mm.
this, but are you going to trust me now that you have that? Because now it
Yeah.
requires these other things. So that just moved me more
Yeah.
into learning how to trust and surrender, right? Because a lot of times we ask for stuff and
Mm.
it doesn't come the way that we expect it to come. We got to trust that it came the way that
That's right.
God
That's
intended and that is for our well being and our best
intended.
good,
Mm.
even though it doesn't look the way that we thought it was going to look.
Mm. Mm.
So I had to trust him. I had to trust him,
Right.
right? So I had the, hard
Mm.
conversation with my husband. I was like, okay, so I can't work, which means I got to depend on your money. And let's face it, I didn't have a whole lot of savings because I was a single parent for many years. So I was like, I got to depend on you to give me
That's
money. And,
right.
he was like, well, no, you don't have to depend on me to give me money. You're my wife. I would give you money, period. What are you talking about? So I was like, oh, okay, you got to be God sent, or I'm just
Right.
dreaming all the way through, all the way through this. And he was like,
Right.
no, you won't have to
Right.
ask me for money. I'll
Right.
always make sure you have what you need.
Mm.
I'll always make sure that you have money. It's like, okay. I said,
Wow.
because you taking me out of the country. It's like, yeah, we're fine. I said, okay. So
Right.
I had to trust God. I had to trust him. And through that, like I
Mm.
said, I grew in really knowing who God is in my life and my ability to create the life that I desired. All of that came from that. And then once I
Yes.
created that life, I
Yes.
had to trust God
Yes.
that yes, this is it. Yes, this is what I have for you and greater
Yes.
and greater. Many people would have questioned that. Many people would have been
Mm-hmm.
afraid to say, "Oh, I'm not leaving the country with some man that, I've only known you for 2 years and now you want to whisk me out of the country." A lot of people wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
taken that step. But that's where belief, trust, and surrender
Mm.
came in. And the same thing happens for us in our businesses.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm.
ask God for stuff, it shows up and it
Mm.
looks different than we thought. We've got to trust that it's the best thing
And
for
what we
us.
thought. Mm-hmm. Woo! Valerie,
Thank
this was
you. This is
so
I
good.
love this.
This was so good. Yes, this was so good. And I know that, there may be some people who are interested in connecting with you directly or learning more about your coaching program and how you could help them just kind of shift their mindset and go from overwhelmed to
Yeah,
actually
right.
having a profitable business and life at the
So
same
I
time.
am
Where
Valerie
can people
Priester on
find you?
all social media platforms. Very easy. My website is valeriepriester.com. So it's very, very easy to find me.
Perfect,
Thank
perfect,
you.
perfect. And thank you. Thank you so, so very much for this amazing, outstanding conversation. And it was just such a pleasure talking with you. And for all of our amazing listeners, thank you for joining in to this amazing conversation. Please hit us up on social media if you want to, keep the conversation going or you have questions or any of that.
Absolutely.
Valerie is here to support and we are here. I am here as well. And thank you. Thank you so much. And remember that you are created in the image of God. You are created in the image of God. You are worthy of every single gift, every single desire, every single wish, dream that you can possibly conceive in your mind. If you can see it, it can be yours. So I want to just remind you of who you are and remind you of that gift, that ability to create that God has already placed inside of you. Utilize that, activate it, and go into partnership with God, because with Him, literally, all things are possible. And we will see you on the next episode. All right. Bye.